LeauxFi, 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 LeauxFi.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is LeauxFi from Internet Money with the mixing tutorial. I'm going to jump into this pretty much right away. Don't want to do a long intro because there's going to be enough talking on this. I'm going to basically mix down the track from my Preview That Kit video. I progressed a little bit since that video ended, but I didn't want to finish it. I'm going to employ some tips and tricks to give you guys, so hopefully pay attention. I'm going to start with the fundamentals, the basics, foundation. There's a difference between mixing and mastering. A lot of you out there seem to believe they're interchangeable, like they mean the same thing, and they don't. Mixing could be thought of in a nutshell as making everything in the beat sound good together. So things aren't clashing, they'll sound good from system to system, whether you're playing on your computer, TV, your car, whatever, off your phone. Make sure it still sounds good and clean. Mastering is more of getting it to be commercially acceptable. So making sure that it's loud enough and still clean at that volume so that it can be played on the radio, or it'll fit into a CD's project or into an album or whatever. An example of when something hasn't been mastered correctly is if you're playing like a playlist or something and all your songs are good at this volume, and then suddenly a song, like the next song comes on and you gotta like turn your system up. Now all of a sudden you gotta, adjust your sound for that one song and then turn it back down for the next song. It's because that song was not mastered loud enough, and it's an absolute tragedy when that happens, so don't make that mistake. But again, we're producers. Mastering is not really our job. It's an entire different world when it really comes to professional engineering. Like, if you want to dabble in that, hey, more power to you, but they get paid for that. I don't, so I'm not doing that. There's this guy, Leslie Braithwaite, Full Sail Hall of Fame. He's a legendary engineer that I used to talk to years ago online. He works out of Patchwork Studios in Atlanta. If you want to know like his clientele, I'm talking about, he goes all the way to the early 90s with Mary J, Jay-Z, Nas. He's the guy who mixed down Pharrell, Happy. Like his level of clientele is completely A-list. And he was telling me a few of the things he did and why. Like, watching him was the first time I ever saw somebody mix with the volume down. And I'll explain later in the video why you do that, because a lot of you guys are employing tips and tricks that people are telling you and don't even know the reason why you're doing it. So you're doing it wrong. You're just copying, for the sake of copying. And I get it, but at least if you understand why you're doing something, maybe you'll figure out why you do or don't need to do that. So without any further ado, let's get into this beat. I'll play what I have right now, and I have no effects on anything. None of the volumes are adjusted. I don't even think everything's on its own track yet. So let's go. So we got a good feel for the beat, right? If you were paying attention, there's some things that are all over the place already that need to be changed. Things that really bother my ear, like when this comes in. Like, I like that tone, but it stands out way too much for one. Let's try this. So we know that stands out too much, right? A lot of things are just honestly just way too loud. I explained this before, so I'll explain it again for whoever's new. The way I try to figure out where my tracks sit is by starting with the drums, mainly the bass, because I know where the bass should sit for the most part on a commercial track. So let's start with Control L so I can give it its own channel, its own unique channel rather. And let's see where this bass is sitting at right now. We see it's like at -9, -8, somewhere around there. And I know that I want my bass to sit around -4 to -7. Somewhere in there is where I want my bass to sit. And I say as high as -4 is because I actually like my bass very loud. That's just the way I like it. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because if a major gets this, like say a major buys this beat right now, they're going to re-engineer it no matter how perfect I mix it down, in my opinion or in my eyes. They have an engineer on deck, on standby, ready to remix it down for them and for their project. So that's why I said it's a whole different world. A lot of you producers put too much emphasis into getting a perfect mix, and it's not going to matter, because at the end of the day, your mix does not matter. As long as they hear enough to get the idea across and decide, yeah, I want that, you're good to go. You know, there's people like 808 Mafia, when they ask, oh, what's your secrets to getting your drums to knock? And Southside literally said, I turn it up. Like, there's a million different ways to get things done. You have to understand that. There's no right or wrong. There's no definitive answer. There's no guideline like that says if you do this, it will always work in every situation. Just whatever gets you to the end result is the right answer, period. Moving forward, I want to start with this bass. I want my bass a little bit louder, and this is my sub bass. So let's see, what's the best way we could do this? I'll probably do a limiter. I love limiters. I know a lot of people say like, oh, I don't, I was told not to use those. And then just like, why? Like, you guys go willy-nilly with compressors. It's damn near the same thing. It's just, instead of squashing the sound, this ceiling here, this green line that you see, it's moving. That ceiling is exactly what it sounds like. No sound will escape this point. So if I have the ceiling at 0, nothing goes past 0 decibels. But let's turn it down to about, let's say -6.1, because I don't want to get -6. I'm lazy, whatever. So let's try it now. And we're going to boost it up under that point. So let's see what we look like. In matter of fact, I'll solo it too, just so you can really see it. So you see I'm still under that -6 mark, right? So I'm going to boost. Now it's cutting off just a little bit of the top end. So that's what I want. So this is essentially where I want the bass to sit for my track right now. Is this loud? And let's make sure. Yep, it's already normalized too. Perfect. So that's where I want my bass sitting, right? So now if I know where my bass is going to sit, let's test the kick. All right. Now we see that my kick is over 0. Yet it's not over 0 here. That's because I always leave a limiter, again, at 0 on the master. So nothing crosses 0 on the master. So that's, I don't know. I don't necessarily have to do anything to my kick right now. Like if I wanted to punch through some more, maybe I could throw some compression on it. Matter of fact, yeah, let's do that. Even though I don't need to, like, whatever, let's do it. So I'll add a second limiter. And the reason I'm putting these at the bottom is just in case I want to add other effects up here. I want these to be the ending effects. But what I mean by that is the order of your effects matters. So let's say I put the limiters here and then I put reverb down here or EQ down here. That would change the overall sound compared to having those on the top, because the order of the effects is basically the order the effects is processed. I guess I'll show that later on. Yeah, I'll show it later on. Screw it. For now, let's get this compressor done. I'm going to link this kick to the 808. I'll right click here, sidechain to this track, come back to this limiter, turn it to compression, right click, insert 1, because that's where the kick was. And now they're linked. So let's leave this on reset. So what we have together is, right? You don't see any difference. Let's bring this all the way up. Now the purple is where the kick is cutting into the 808, right? And if I play with the release on that, you'll really hear it. So I'll put the release on 100% for the kick. See that, how long that recovery is? We don't want that. We want something nice and tight. Always nice and tight. right? So, and this is the threshold, basically. How low do you want your whatever you're sidechaining to dig into the sound? So you see the adjustment is pulling up how much it cuts into it, right? So I slammed it down and it completely eradicates 808 while the kick is going. I think that sounds fine right there. That's whatever. It didn't really need it to begin with, but I made this kick cut through mixes, and that's why I saved it that way, just to make it easy. All right, so let's go with the drums again. Why is this to the left? Y'all see that? Weird. So I actually took it from C5 or middle C to A sharp, just to make it a higher note the easy way. Instead of that, it's here. It's, whatever. I just did it the shortcut way. I could have put it in a piano roll and did it correctly, but I had to do that on every channel. I didn't feel like doing that. So, it sounds fine. Let's get some melody in there. Right. Sounding good. Let's see where the hi-hats are sitting. Control L. And if you notice, the shorty hi-hat leans to the right a little bit. It's not a hard pan to the right. It just leans. It's panned a little bit to the right. And I saved it that way because when you mix, panning can be used to create room in the middle of the track, which is usually where your vocals are always going to sit. So that's one reason you want to pan things. Hard panning something like 100% left, 100% right, I really just don't recommend it. But panning is very good for creating space. So, for instance, if you want something to sound like it's right in front of you, and this is just from audio. It's like if you were to close your eyes and you're playing a song and you want something to sound like it's right in front of you, you pull the sound into mono. Right? So it's not separated in stereo. It's right in mono, and you make it as dry as possible. So there's no tail, no real reverb on it, right? If you want it to sound somewhere else in space, you add the reverb. The more reverb, the further away it sounds, and then you pan it. So you can control sound that way. So I could make a snare sound like it's 5 feet ahead of you and to the right if I EQ it correctly. So that's how you control space, is with reverb and stereo versus mono separation. We'll also go into mono later. But for this hi-hat, by moving it a little to the right, it frees up the middle, which will clean up the mix a little bit. And just by chance, it sounds like it's sitting correctly to me. So I don't feel like I have to really go in there and adjust the hi-hat too much, but we'll double check that later. Now that sounds like it's probably too loud, so Control L. I guess it's all right. Yeah, a little bit more like that. All right, let's get all the drums in and just see what sounds too loud. We can stop right there. This hi-hat automatically way too loud, right? So let's pull it down. All right, I think I want to add some light reverb to that too after we pull the volume down. I'll go ahead and make it big room reverb. Let's see what that sounds like. Too much. It's way too wet. Still too wet. That should be fine. Right, so it's sitting right where I want it to. Let's try with the other bass, the one we started with, which was a synth or Reese or whatever you want to call it bass. Now this is going to be interesting because of where I wanted it to sit was very low in the beat. So let's do it with these two sounds so you could really hear it. See, that low note is sitting very, very low. So let's give it its own track and let's look at where it is sitting. Way in the low end. So I'm not even, a lot of times I'll tell you to cut that out to get rid of muddiness, but I kind of want that muddiness just a little bit. Because I know traditionally that is too low for a sound, right? So here's what I'm going to do. First, let's save. What I'm going to do, come to the effects over here. I am going to use distortion to boost basically this area here and give it more presence. Since the load is so low, wow, my English broke. Since the load is so low, I'm going to give it more low, mid, and mid presence with distortion, right? So let's see. I have a couple of different options. There's, of course, Decapitator, which Wonder Girl and Eastbound originally said they use a lot. So, of course, people jumped on the bandwagon very quickly. It's pretty straightforward if you don't really care. I'll just show you the effects of it right now. Let's pull this up here so we can probably see it better. All right. And let's get the pattern going. Do you hear the difference in that? Like how much more present it became instantly. Of course, you could do Punish, which is just, it's ugly distortion. It sounds like this. That's like Kanye West, Mike Dean distortion. And it has its place, just not here. Right, so that's Decapitator. Did that really quickly. Another one of my favorites, Blood Overdrive is a quick way to get a bass to stand out. So let's do it without and with it. That versus, and you might not be able to tell too much, but it definitely fills the sound up more. And I didn't adjust a single thing here. So that's a Blood Overdrive. One of my other favorites, but the program is so fluky, which really sucks because I actually bought it. And it just doesn't, sometimes it just has weird glitches or whatever. This is FabFilter Saturn. FabFilter makes excellent products when they work. So that's the sound wave of the bass we're seeing. What you can do with FabFilter is you can actually segment whatever it is that you want to perfect with distortion. So I don't need all these, right? So let's see. I don't even remember how to remove these. Oh my God. Why would you do this now? All right, there we go. So I'm going to leave it just like this. So the low end, I'm going to leave untouched, and you could slide these also. Like I said, FabFilter is an amazing product when it works. Let's do it like this. And on this side, I'm going to give it a heavy saturation and turn the drive up some. So it sounds like this instead. Versus without it. Maybe gentle. Right? And what I really could do is take this high end, like around 400. It's telling you where it is, right? 400 hertz. You can look here if you wanted to compare. That's about right here, right in the low mid. So we could slide this back probably like 360 is fine. That'll pull us right around here where I want to boost a lot. And I can really just turn this section up. But see, by doing that, I've also turned up all the empty space here. But just like I said, just for an example, I don't even know which one I'm going to go with right now. Like, that sounds good. Well, let's see which one sounds better with the melody going. Too subtle. I like that. Both. I think I'm gonna stick with Fab Filter. Hope I don't pay the price for that, because like I said, it really has an attitude. All right, continuing on. So we have this sound here. So that's still just a little bit too high as well. So let's go ahead and turn that down some, give it its own channel. Now, I took a shortcut, which might penalize me a little bit, is this track right here, if you're looking, is also the same exact sound. It's just playing counter melody to that. And what that is playing is this. You see, that's super high, so it's really cutting through the mix, especially because most of the beat is sitting down low. So what I'm actually going to do is do the right thing. I'm going to just duplicate this, put it on its own track so I can mix it separately. That's just the right thing to do. I was just being lazy. All right, let's just move this down one. New track, pull this down as well. All right, that's sounding better. All right, fix that pretty quickly, right? And then we know that this one here is I lied. We know this one here is definitely too loud. I don't know why it comes across so loud. So definitely pulling that down. And we don't need it to be too loud because, especially since the sound is actually panning, it's actually panning itself from my kit. I just set it to do that. Much like the bells, actually, the bells are panning too, left and right. Not 100%, of course. Like I said, you just don't really want to do that in most cases. So it doesn't have to be too loud. When something is panned, it becomes more clear to us. It becomes more clear in the mix. Also, because like I said, it's not fighting for room in the center of the track. So you don't have to have it as loud. And so that's a very good reason to pan things, not just because whatever, you saw someone else do it. Now we have this low sound here. Up until this point, all we've been doing is leveling. I have not really mixed down anything, but just by adjusting certain volumes, it sounds much cleaner already. Sometimes you just need a good level and let the engineer take care of the rest. Looking at this, you can see where it sits might conflict with the bass some. See? So they actually overlap, but even though they overlap, it still sounds clean. It doesn't have any distortion. So I don't need to EQ it, but I will, just to clean it up, because why not? Let's test it against the 808 that comes in. So you see all that fluctuation in the 808. It's coming out to here, right? So this sound is coming out to a little bit past, so they're overlapping too. So definitely want to clean this sound up a little bit, because even if we can't detect distortion, you want to prevent it on any system. So what you want to do is my rule of thumb is when I'm EQing something, cut as much as you can so you don't lose the feeling, the essence of the sound, but you give everything around it the most room. So basically trim all the fat. That's what you really want to do from sounds, is trim all the unnecessary sound. So let's see where this is at. It's sitting in this range. So what I'm going to do, cut everything around that. Right? And I really could come in just a little bit more, which will roll off that lowest note. Because the lowest note won't be so important because the bass is going to take up that area. So and I also really hear it clearly in my left ear. But like I said, you don't want to lose the feeling. I wanted to have a little bit more punch on that left side. I'll bring that back a little bit. Perfect. Right? Speaking of which, let's go ahead and look at this one, see what it's doing. Honestly, I'll bring this down too. So let's do steep 8, right clicked, order, steep 8. Basically to give me a really strong step here, a quick roll off. And you see I cut off as much as I can where the bass will still sound the same. So you can't hear any of these frequencies, but there is still stuff there. Especially when the notes come higher. Right there is fun. All right. I'll clean this up, this area here too. So order, steep 8. And there's other ways of doing this. It's just what I'm doing right now. And I see some of the frequencies got through. So from my earlier tips and tricks video, I'm going to turn this on first. Save preset as, double it up. Cleaner. There. So, good. You see that? The middle's empty right now. We like that. Where's this sitting at? Do you hear that? There's like a little pop that's coming. You can actually see it here every now and then too. Right there. See that little blip? That little blip, wherever that's coming from, is causing that pop. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Control S for the save. And let's do the same exact thing. Like, it's not complicated. You don't have to make it rocket science. Let's see where it is. This is where the main sound should be. No lower than here, apparently. So really, it's only one note that comes down here. I know you still hear that pop, right? So let's cut the high end too. And this is what I said, cut as much as you can so you can get rid of artifacts like this. Now the sound sounds exactly the same, but we've already shed the pop sound. Also, I'll double it up one more time just to make sure it's, you know, it's all copacetic and whatnot. But also what we've done here is given more room on this end of the spectrum where your hi-hats sit, where the upper range of the vocals is going to sit. All the other brighter sounds don't have to clash with this sound, at least at this point. know what? I kind of want this to sound a little bit louder too. So let's do the same thing with the limiter. And let's put the ceiling this time. Actually, we'll put the ceiling in the same exact spot, 6.1. Bring it up a little bit. Yes. See all that's cutting off from the higher notes? All of that. I actually kind of want this to cut through more. So, I forgot. I already took this here. I'll take that off right now so you can see what that did to the sound, right? That's what it normally sounds like. And whoopsie. So I had it like around here. This is a legacy effect, so it's only in FL11. I've showed this before. You can use the amp to just make the overall sound louder. I didn't really want that. I wanted to change the sound just a little bit. Make it thump a little harder. And you see that it's taking up the whole spectrum. And I'm gonna leave it that way. Actually, I'm gonna leave it that way. Let somebody else cut it if they want to. I'm not going to. Not on the rim. Well, I see that I actually can afford to cut some of this low. We'll do that. Perfect. All right. Then I actually had FL keys here. It turns out I actually like the FL keys sound with this beat, so we're going to leave it. And this is my MIDI too, so they're playing the same notes. All right, so we're going to turn that down because it's way too loud. You know what? That's a good time also to explain. Sometimes you'll see people adjusting these knobs, including myself. It's a quick adjustment, and in most cases you don't hear the difference, but there is a difference. So this, you can think of this as output versus input when it comes to these. This is sending the actual sound to your mixer. That's what these knobs are doing. They're sending whatever sound you have loaded to your mixer. And then your mixer, this here, is mixing the final output, which is all of the VSTs or sounds or plugins or whatever you have on a sound. This is mixing them all. That's what this is controlling. So in most cases, you won't hear a difference unless you have a lot of sounds. And you know what? I just remembered I was supposed to show you guys the differences with the order too. So I'll go back and do that really quick. So in this case, I could either turn FL keys down here, where I could just probably turn this down to like, what, 50% or something? Either way is right. It doesn't matter. Like I said, whatever gets you to your end result is fine. Now I'm going to throw effects on this rim because I want you to understand there's a difference, right? So what is this? This is just a cut. All right, cool, perfect. So let's move this down, right? And let's put a reverb first, right? So what's happening is the chain of command is that we're getting the signal for this snare, to come to the mixer. It then hits reverb first, which affects the entire sound. And then the EQ comes after, which is cutting not only the low end off of the sound now, but also the low end of the reverb. So listen to this. And then if we were to switch this order by moving this up, so now the low end gets cut first, and then the reverb is afterwards. Wrong one. So move up. If you notice, this one here sounds a lot sharper. It sounds sharper because there's nothing muddying up the low end first. So this is where an example could show you where basically like the order makes sense. Whatever. My English is so damn broken. It's been a long day. Fuck me. Don't. But let me see. Is there another way I could show it? Probably with the kick. And let me get rid of that reverb before I forget it's there. That's always the worst. Let me do it with the kick, which I believe is on insert 1. So let's do a soft clipper and an EQ. So EQ and a soft clipper. Where is that thing? And I use these on kick sometimes too. It's whatever. So here's what we have with both of them on. I lied. Here we go. Right? So let's EQ out the high. All right. So you EQ the high end out of this, right? That's with them both together. Now let's move this up. Versus. Do you hear it? I have my headphones in, so I could clearly hear it. This one sounds muddier than that one, which punches through more. So these are subtle examples, but they all do matter. And if you have something like gross beat, for example, and you know what? Let's just do that. Why not? And let's just try to make this one quick. I'm not even going to keep explaining it. I'll just show it to you. Let's do gross beat first. You know what? I have a better example. A phaser. Right? Or flanger. Nah. Okay. So flanger is definitely on here. Right? Versus reverb. Make it wet. That's holding one note. Move it up. You should be able to hear that clearly. Right? So the reverb is affecting everything the flanger does compared to the reverb hits first, and then the reverb itself gets flanged, which sounds like this. So that one sounds much more spacey. Whereas this one just sounds like it gets louder and louder. So that's a good example of how order can definitely affect it. And of course, like I said, the more effects you have here, or the stronger the effect you have, the more apparent it becomes. All right, and for the final part of what I'm going to show you guys today is the reason behind mixing in low volume and in mono. So even though like right now, like, yeah, we did a quick mixing session, it would have been a lot quicker if I'm not explaining everything. I'm going to pull this volume down. And a lot of people have started using this technique, but don't really understand why they're doing it. So listen to the difference between 100% right? So it sounds fine. But when you pull it down low, some things are going to stand out. When you pull the volume knob low, and it's not just a knob, if you turn your volume down low when you mix, and this is what Leslie told me, things start to stand out that you would not have caught at a louder volume. There's a lot of times where people have whack beats, but they play them at a loud volume, and all of a sudden it feels like, you know, oh, this beat is awesome. And you turn it to a regular volume, or you come back the next day and you're like, oh, this is some hot trash. Like, the loudness war will distort the way you hear something. Like, you won't notice that something's necessarily mixed bad if the entire track is loud and booming, so you're just going to the general sound. Once you turn it down some more, you'll start realizing that something's way too loud or something's way too quiet, because the differences aren't really being highlighted at a high volume. At a normal volume or a low volume, that's when you can really hear it. So even though things sounded okay at 100%, something might stand out now that we've turned this down, and I'll see what happens. So to me, something does stand out. And it's that this note is still too loud. This is still too loud. And the way you could tell, another example, if you ever hear when a track is fading out and at the end, and you know the beat's still going, and you can still, like, even though everything's getting really quiet, there's still one sound that you can still hear clearly. Like, you'll hear like the snare all the way until the end of the track. Like, even though it's quiet, like everything else is gone, but the snare is still there. It's because the snare was too loud. And, you know, sometimes it's okay to have one sound be too loud if you want that to be the focal point, whatever. Like I said, if it sounds good, it sounds good. But that's a quick way to tell. So with it down low, we can actually hear that this sound is louder than the melody at a low volume. Do you catch that? Which means we need to pull it down so it sits correctly in the mix. So let's pull it down a little bit more. Great. Can we afford a little bit more? At this point, I've now chopped like a good 20% off in the volume here on the slider, and we can still clearly hear it, which means it was that much louder than it needed to be at full volume. But we wouldn't have caught it. It was blending in with the other sounds. It sounded fine. So here in my headphones, I couldn't tell that it was too loud. It sounded like it was fine to me because other sounds were covering how loud it really was. Once we turned the volume down, I noticed that the main melody is not as loud as this one sound. So if I want it to be louder, now I have room to play with it. Pause. Now I have room to play with it and get it to be a little bit louder, but I don't want it to be overpowering everything else in the mix, which is good. What I can also hear here is that my rim itself is a little bit loud. Right there. So that secondary snare that I like to do. This one, also too loud. Give it its own channel. We didn't even have it on channel yet. Let's just loop this channel. It'll come in towards the end. Listen for it. Way too loud, right? So let's start it right here halfway through. Much better. And again, like, look at the reduction. So we've literally cut about 25% off of it. I want that to stand out a little bit more just because that's the style with those drums, like to make the glitchy sound stand out. Maybe just a little bit more. But that's just my taste. I like my drums to be louder than anything. All right, so. Great. So the mix is sounding a lot cleaner. Now I can crank the volume on a different system and it's not so likely to clip or to distort or anything like that. Now, also the very last thing we're going to go over here is mono. When people say, oh yeah, you got to mix in mono. Mono is basically, right now, you're probably listening to me on headphones, which have 2 ears, or speakers, 2 sides. Stereo. Mono is pretending that you have one speaker, one omnidirectional speaker in front of you. So the best way to imitate mono is like back in the old days of the old radio, old jukebox, you have one speaker where all the sound is coming from. It's not 2 sides playing at the same time. So mono, the reason you want to mix in mono is because it's almost like a reference point. It's kind of like the NS10s. The Yamaha NS10s are famous monitors that people rant and rave about. But the real reason that NS10s were actually famous is because they sucked so bad. NS10s are so bad that if you can get a mix to sound good on them, that mix will sound good anywhere. So it's kind of like they were infamous. Like, if you can get this to sound good here, then we know you're great. You don't got to check it nowhere else. It's done. So it's like a reference point. Mono, people don't necessarily listen to things in mono anymore, but if you can get it to sound good in mono, it'll sound good in stereo. So it's like that kind of thing. So right now we have stereo, and all I'm doing is turning it to mono on the stereo, on the master. So we're just going to click this knob and bring it all the way to the right. You can see in the top left here, it says merged or separated. Separated, of course, being stereo, merged being mono. So now we have it in mono. What this is actually making me want to do is bring my, this is actually making me want to bring this sound down a little bit more. That's what I'm hearing when I put it in mono. So maybe like around here, because it's overpowering. My drums are still nice and clean, which is good. They're a little loud, but like I said, I like my drums loud. This was still a little too loud, which I discovered using mono. So those are your basic mixing tips. I'm sorry for the long video, but I wanted to show you guys what really goes into like your basic stuff. Like as of this point, all we have done is leveled and your most basic of EQs, which is really just cutting lows and highs thus far. And the track sounds infinitely better if you can apply these things to your beat as you go. The only reason I didn't do this like earlier while I was forming the beat in the other video is because I knew I was going to do a video on this, so I just saved it for the very end. Of course, I'm going to come back in here, add some sauce or whatever, but this is what you guys need to be thinking about when you're doing your mixes. So if you're going to mix something down and you want to check that mix, do it the old school way. I advise, if you don't have great monitors, do what I and many countless others had to do. Put it on your phone or a CD or USB or whatever and go check it on different systems. I used to have to I had these crappy Dell speakers from like 2008, and one of them had a short, so I would make a beat and I had like a CD RW, like the rewritable CD, where I would literally just put down that mix of the beat, go all the way downstairs 3 floors to my car, play it on my system to see how it sounded, bring it right back up. And I would just repeat the cycle until I got it correct. And then I would put it in my friend's boombox or stereo or whatever, just to see if he had it right. Then I would put it on the USB, take it to the TV, see if like anything was coming across way too high or whatever. Like, do what you got to do to get it right. mix in mono so you can see if anything is too loud. You want a good reference point. If it sounds good in mono, it'll sound good in stereo. In stereo, you want to put it down low, mix down low, so you can see if anything is too loud, if anything stood out that you didn't notice because everything else was too high at the time. So those are some quick tips. Hopefully you guys picked up something from this. If you have any other questions, just leave a comment below and we'll all get back to you ASAP basically. But thank you for your time, guys. This has been LeauxFi for Internet Money, and peace.
LeauxFi.